Nest thermostat Gen 1 was just installed after switching from a Honeywell digital. Everything seems to be working, but the AC is now blowing warm air. Worked before installing the new unit. I had it running for 30 minutes last night and the temperature just kept climbing. I have it off right now. Just cut it on and the outside unit instantly turned on.
Mark Henley, okay, so it was running when the temperature climbed? Did it provide any cooling after the thermostat install? Okay, I see it's on now. Is this a heat pump?
We had not tried the AC before last night with the new thermostat. Ran it for a while and the temperature just climbed and the air coming out of the vent was pretty warm, not cool at all. Yes, I believe it is a heat pump.
Mark Henley, yes, sounds like it is, so let's go with the idea that the unit can work and that maybe there is something in the terminal wiring that's a problem. Would you be able to tell me which wires you took off the old stat and where they are at now on the new one by terminal designation, example, R1 RB went to B? And it is a heat pump. Looked it up.
Red R to RH, orange W to W1, yellow Y to Y1, green G to G, brown C to C, white W2 to OW2.
Mark Henley, okay, is there also an R terminal on the new stat? If so, is there a wire on it?
There is a RC and it has no wire on the last thermostat. The R and RC were jumped together. The new thermostat says it is not necessary to jump them together.
Mark Henley, okay, you will need to add a wire that goes from the RH terminal to the R terminal, so a short piece of wire wired to both of those terminals. They may say it, but we should rule it out. In general, that jumper is needed to get the cooling to operate.
Okay, let me see what I can do. It's on the other side of the wiring system instead of right next to each other like the old system. I need to go find some wire and cut it since the old system's jumper will not work to short.
Mark Henley, okay. Yes, I'm looking through the install manual to see if there may be a configuration problem also. Okay, if you haven't put the jumper in yet, let's wait a minute. They are telling us that we should not put it in there. Apparently they do jump them internally. Do you not have a wire on the OB terminal?
No, I don't.
Mark Henley, okay, there needs to be a wire there. This terminal operates the reversing valve that switches it from heat to cool. Let me look at your wires for a minute. Are there any wires that were connected to the old stat that are now not connected to the new one?
Maybe I read it wrong on the old thermostat. I was reading the letters from the conventional diagram, not the heat pump diagram.
Mark Henley, okay.
So instead of going to W1 it shows OB. Should I change that over? Put the orange wire from W1 to OB.
Mark Henley, yes.
Okay, changed it over. Cut everything back on, turning AC on. Now I don't hear the outside unit cutting on, but fan is running inside. I can hear that.
Mark Henley, okay, is anything flashing on the thermostat? Anything different?
No, in settings now.
Mark Henley, it is set for cooling? Try running the temp down to a lower set point.
Ja. Installed as heat pump heating, auxiliary heating and heat pump cooling. I scroll to heat pump to see equipment settings.
Mark Henley, okay, I'm not finding those settings in the manual. You do need to set it to heat pump with auxiliary heating if there is a choice.
Ja. Asks me use heat pump compressor when outdoor temp is above. Always or a temp, clicked on always and outdoor unit came on.
Mark Henley, okay, depending where you are at, you may want to not use it above 0 degrees. If there is a choice, when it came and did it start cooling?
Ja. Seems cooler coming out of vent. I am in Charleston, SC, and I have never seen 0 degrees.
Mark Henley, what it was asking you is if you want to use your compressor for heating when it's very cold outside. In Charleston it's a non-issue for you. And I don't know how it would know what the temp is outside anyway, since you don't have an outside sensor connected, unless there is one, so you chose the right thing. If you were to go to heat unit, you should feel warm air blowing out of the unit outside.
Ja. Let me check. The air coming out the vents inside is much cooler.
Mark Henley, it sounds like the unit was running in heat mode before and all needed was to get the reversing valve to reverse. The OE terminal controls that function. If the cooling is working now, you will want to run through a heating cycle to make sure that part still works.
Ja. Okay. Let me switch it to heating. Starts in 2 minutes.
Mark Henley, okay, there may be an inherent delay of about 5 minutes before it lets it switch, but maybe not. Okay, I see it's 2 minutes.
Ja. Is on, must be in stage 1 BC. It doesn't say stage 2 heating. Before it would cut on stage 1 and that air didn't seem very warm. If we turned it up even more, it would kick on stage 2 and that air seemed warmer and blew out faster. Right now the air coming out doesn't seem warm. Doesn't seem to want to switch to stage 2 anymore.
Mark Henley, okay, if the outside unit is running then you are on stage 1, which means that the heat pump is providing the heat mechanically. When it goes to stage 2 then the auxiliary initiates, and that is more like a toaster type heat, much warmer. You would need to measure the temp of the heat coming out to get a good idea how the pump is performing. Generally if it's only the heat pump running, the outlet temp ends up at about 100 to 105 degrees, then when the auxiliary heat come on it gets up about 20 degrees higher. It's a noticeable difference, but the auxiliary heat is much more expensive to run. It may not allow it to switch to stage 2 right off the bat. It may make it wait for a time period, or maybe in the settings you have to tell it that it is a heat pump with auxiliary heat.
Ja. It asks what outside temp to put it at in order to run heat. It is set to 50 degrees. Right now it's about 65 outside.
Mark Henley, okay, you will have to move that up above 65 to test it, but you really don't want your final setting to be that. 40 to 50 is probably a normal setting on that. Although I don't know how it knows what the outside temp is unless maybe it comes through the web.
Ja. Didn't change anything and it seems a little warmer. Waiting to see if the thermostat show the temp rising in-house. Outside unit is running.
Mark Henley, okay, keep in mind that the second stage costs about 3 times more to run than just the first stage type of heat.
Ja. Wow, does actually feel like slightly warm air is coming out now.
Mark Henley, yes, they call it a COP, a comparison from the mechanical heat to the straight electrical heat. The auxiliary heat is straight electrical and 3 times is a generous estimate, it's probably more like 3.5 times. Does the stat say that you are in second stage heating?
Ja. Just switch the temp to 75 degrees for O heat. Turned up thermostat and it reads O heat now on dial.
Mark Henley, okay, should get warmer, only takes a minute to heat up.
Ja. Seemed warmer. Turned it back.
Mark Henley, sounds like you got it.
Ja. On another note, when it's cold outside and the heat turns on, there is a loud racket coming from the compressor for about 2 to 5 seconds. Only when it starts up and when it's cold. Any idea? Is that normal?
Mark Henley, sometimes it is normal. It's basically refrigerant sitting in the compressor as a liquid that the compressor throws out at startup. Compressor really only wants to deal with refrigerant in a vapor state. With a scroll compressor it's not as much of a problem as it used to be with reciprocating or piston type compressors, but it may be a sign that you either don't have a what they call a crankcase heater or it's not working. There are other things that can also cause the problem, but typically it's the crankcase heater.
Ja. Okay, thanks for your help.
Mark Henley, I wouldn't advise doing that one yourself honestly, but definitely mention it to a service tech.
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit justanswer.com/ythi.